Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Kohan Landsman. I'm the president of SHAI, and it's really my pleasure to be here for our second series together with the library, in collaboration with the library on Persian Jewish heritage. A little word about SHAI. For those of you who don't know us, SHAI is a fully volunteer-run organization. We were founded over 32 years ago. Our mission is to preserve our Persian Jewish heritage that is over 2,500 years old. We offer we have two main goals, two main ways of preserving our heritage. One is through programming such as today, where we do educational programming regarding Iranian Jewish heritage, and sometimes it's about other programs, health, education. We work with the Great Neck public school system and all the local institutions. We have also expanded over the last couple of years into New York City, where there is a growing Persian Jewish community as well. Here in Great Neck, we offer a free, kosher, Farsi-run senior program 3 days a week. So if you have senior citizens who would like to attend our programs, we are at the Great Neck Social Center Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays from 10 to about 1 o'clock. And we also have given out so far $2 million in scholarships. We give scholarships to our students at Long Island Hebrew Academy and also to schools of higher learning. I see we have also our banner here. It's being set up, so we will have that up soon in a minute. I want to thank Mr. Delafras for bringing the banner for us today, as always. SHAI also has many programs, like I said. We have a singles program called SHAI Stars, and we have a young professionals program aimed at young professionals between the ages of 22 and 35. We have a Sheshbesh night coming up January 28th. If you have any young professionals who are interested, please let us know and I can forward you that information. And if you'd like to be added to the SHAI email list, please let me know and I can take your information today. So that's about SHAI. And about today, I'm really personally very excited for this program because both the ladies that are sitting here today before us are good friends of mine, and I really have been so happy to reconnect with both of them and to be able to present this community with their wisdom here today. Our speaker, our author today is Regine M, Tessone. In her intimate memoir, Monavar, a Farsi name meaning light, which is Regine's Persian name, recreates the life of her Persian Jewish family before they fled Iran and her own adventures in their new home in America. Always buoyant, Omid, those of us who know her maiden name, Omid, means hope in Persian. Regine describes reuniting with her mother's family in Brooklyn, visiting Israel and serving as a volunteer, falling in love with a non-Persian Jew and becoming a successful fashion designer. Her story, at once personal and paradigmatic, reflects her nostalgia for the homeland of her youth and her embrace of the opportunities of her abandoned homeland in the United States as a successful Iranian Jewish immigrant. Most famously, Regine is known as the designer and founder of Aqua Modesta Swimwear, which is a line of modest swimwear sold internationally. Our interviewer today is Rebetzin, is belovedly known as the Rebetzin Sarah Kohan, the wife of Rabbi Kohan of Congregation Torah or of Great Neck. However, Rebetzin Kohan is a community leader and inspiration in her own right. Rebetzin Kohan has earned the admiration and respect of the community with a following, especially amongst the women of the community whose lives she enhances in many ways, including sending out daily 1-minute notes on raising and educating kids. She holds regular classes on bettering interpersonal relationships, and these classes are offered in person and by Zoom to make them accessible to as many people as possible. Currently, Rebetzin Kohan is starting a special 40-day gratefulness series. She also teaches Torah and Judaic subjects to girls attending public schools and whoever else may be interested in learning. Most importantly, perhaps, she manages a shidduch website where she matches Jewish singles of various observance levels, and she does it all with a witty sense of humor, which I'm sure we will experience here today. With that said, I'm going to turn the program over to the panelists and to Rebetzin Kohan. Start.
So, you guys can hear me? I wanted to closer. I mean, I could always yell. I'm very good at that. So, first I want to thank SHAI and Mojgan for putting this together. And of course, I want to thank my interviewer and all of you, and the Great Neck Library for hosting us. So let's get down to business, yeah? To the nitty-gritty. So let's start from the beginning. I mean, I'm looking around in the audience, not the Ashkenazi ones, the Sephardi ones, the Persian ones, and I see most of us kind of came out of Iran in conjunction with what's going on here in Iran. Again, like the whole, it brings back memories. I was 8 years old when the whole thing happened, and I left on actually a plane 2 days after Khomeini came. You know, we went to London with my mom and my 3 brothers. So let's start from the beginning. I see a lot of people here that are Persian, I assume also came out. You know, so you wrote a book about the experience. So let's start from the beginning. So you came out of Iran because of the revolution, and you wrote a book about it. So I guess my main question would be, how is your experience different than our experience? I mean, tell us a little bit about your specific experience coming out of Iran due to the revolution that makes it different than all of us, the rest of us that came out.
I found that when I was writing the book, I would come across many Persians throughout the years. My husband and I used to travel across the U.S. for SHAI University to different Sephardic communities. And everywhere we went, once they found out I was Persian, they would say, oh, you gotta meet this other Persian couple or this Persian woman. You must meet them. So I would meet them, and the first question I always asked other Persians was, when did you leave? And I found that question to be like the most important question, because from there you understood what more or less how their life was pre, post, and what was going on. So sometimes a Persian would tell me, oh, I left a long, long time ago. That's old news. And I would know that that's quite the opposite. Chances are they left more recently and they don't want to talk about it. So I would say, really, that's interesting, because I left in the last flight out of Tehran in 1979 with my family. We were the last flight. They literally closed the airport after that. We were very lucky. And I remember everything. I remember details. I have it in my memory. And I remember the revolution. I remember the pre-revolution. I remember the fear. And the minute I started to talk, they would say, they felt comfortable. Their guard would come down and they would say, well, actually, we were stuck there, and this is what happened. And they would all tell me different stories. But what was remarkable to me, that it was very unique. The Persian community in Tehran, in Isfahan, Hamadan, Shiraz, Yaz, we were all very different. Every city in Iran had its own flavor. And every one of us had different experiences and nuances. And I actually learned more about my own Persian culture through these years that I was in the United States, that we would travel to different countries. I actually learned much more about my own heritage than I knew about in Iran. In Iran, we lived in a very guarded style. Like, we lived in Tehran, and my family was very unique in that we lived. My father used to work with the government of the Shah, so we were considered like in the upper tier of the society. We lived in a different way. I went to Lycée Razi, which is a very unique school where we learned half the day French, half the day Farsi at a high level. So from a very young age, I had to be fluent in Farsi and in French, to read, to write, to speak. And that's where the Shah's son attended. I speak French fluent, yeah. So that's where we met the Shah's son, and we actually met the Shah in my school. And I wrote about that in the book, the experience of meeting the king, what it was like. So it was very different for me. So I had friends from my synagogue, from the community, we had friends from my school, and we had friends from, because my father and mother interacted with ambassadors, a lot of the ambassadors' kids. So it was a very different flavor than, let's say, other friends. Later on, I made friends with a young man who was from Hamadan, and he explained to me how every time I describe Iran and what we lived like, he couldn't relate. He was like, it was so different for me. It was such a different experience. We were poor and we didn't have basic foods, and it was just very different lifestyle what we had. And for me, coming to the United States was my wake-up call into real world society. It was like, we really experienced a very wealthy lifestyle in Iran, where we went skiing lessons, ice skating lessons, ballet, piano, after school. It was a very different form of lifestyle. For me to come to the United States and leave all that behind and start anew was, for me, tremendously traumatic experience. But that helped me develop into who I am today. So I think each of us really had a very different experience.
So now, now it's clear to me, because I remember even as a youngster, like we didn't even own a car. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm hearing you're dealing with the Shah, and I'm dealing with like playing on the streets with the stones. So now I understand a little bit. Still, I was talking to another lady who left without the plane. She had to go through, Pakistan with a stolen car. The car broke down. 3 days they had no water, no food. At some point the plane, airplane was, the helicopter was passing over their head. They really thought they were gonna get shot. They were gonna they were gonna be killed. And literally what she described was pure nightmare. So again, like in comparison to that, yes, you went from a very rich to a brand new culture with maybe less money. So explain to me still, how do you deserve, like I just explained to you, a lot of people spent many days, they were caught and put in jail. Tell me a little bit more, how is your experience different than, let's say, this lady who almost died? They were almost caught and they were almost died. 3 days, no food, no water. So a little bit more about what you experienced.
So I could tell you, like, going back to 1978, where my family and I, we spent the summer in Israel. Back then, there were direct flights that went from Iran to Israel. Hopefully soon, we're gonna have that again. So we were there in the summer of 78. My parents left us there with their family in Israel, and they toured Europe. Upon coming back to Iran, my father asked the cab driver, what's new? Because the cab drivers have the heart on what's going on day to day. And the cab driver told my father they burned down the local library, they burned down this theater, and he started to understand this is the time we have to start getting ready. And he turned to my mother and said, we have to pack, we have to leave. And I couldn't, as a child, listening to my parents' conversation, which overall they did not have in front of us. They would have serious conversations in private, but it happened to be this I overheard, and I couldn't understand why is it suddenly we have to leave a country? Like why is that problematic? So my father said, when they burn the books, they burn the people. So we have to start to think to leave. But my mother said, no, we'll start school year, because it was the beginning of the school year. And I guess this gave her a chance to prepare for what she had to do without us around her. So we started the school year. It was the 3rd grade in Lycée Razi. And classrooms weren't all fully built. I remember some of the classrooms were like in pitch tents. And we started the year, and right away I started to sense from classmates, from teachers, there was a certain coldness, a certain change in behavior. As children, you notice tones and body language, and you notice feelings. You know, as children, you're very connected to people's facial expressions. I mean, at least I was. I still am. I'm still, you know, maybe because part of me is an artist, I pay a lot of attention to small details. So I remember the teacher who I had from the previous year, she seemed a little bit more stern than usual. And we started our classes and our lessons, and then she took out this book, the Koran, and she started to teach. And I was fascinated. Wow, what is this book? What is this? And then she suddenly looked around and she said, you, get up, go to recess. So the other girls, they were thrilled. They're like, oh, great, I don't have to hear and learn this. Me, I was so curious. I thought that book was fascinating. So I said, no, I'll stay. And she said, you don't have an option to stay. You have to go to recess. And I said, but I don't want to go to recess. I want to learn what's in this book. So then the kids would glare at me, and the teacher would say, we cannot continue to learn from this book while you're sitting in the class.
So you didn't know that it's the Quran?
I had no idea what a Quran is, we didn't have any interaction with Muslims. On a personal level, I mean, my neighbor, the daughter was a Muslim, and I played with her all the time, but we never spoke about religion. We didn't talk about Quran.
Were you?
I didn't know what that is.
Association
I had
with the
no
Torah?
idea what that is. No. So to me, it was rather odd. You know, where we religious as the way you describe orthodoxy in America? No.
No, absolutely.
We were
not.
traditional.
But you had some sort of a connection.
But I didn't know
with
what a
your
Quran
Judaism?
is. I didn't know what the Quran is. I didn't know what that is. And it was, to me, that was very odd. Like, we had a maid, and I wrote about it in the book, who she would, in the days of the Shah, the women were not allowed to walk around with the hijabs. So she would come to our house before starting to clean. She would put on her hijab, and she would bow down to what I call this rock, and she would pray. And it always irked me that she did that. I don't know why it irked me. It just irked me as a child. Perhaps because I didn't get her attention. Perhaps because when I talked to her, she didn't respond. And one day, my parents weren't home, and she started to do that. And I took the rock, and I threw it out of the balcony. And it just irked me to watch this woman do that. I don't know why. I don't know what possessed me to do that. So she just looked at me, and she said, wait till your father comes home. That's when I knew I'm in big trouble. And she wouldn't talk to me. She was furious. She ran downstairs to try to get a rock. I'm like, I'll give you another rock. She goes, no, I don't want another rock. I want that rock. And I couldn't understand what I did wrong. It's just a rock. So my father came back, and my mother was like, this one's for you. And he took me to the room, and he said, what was that all about? I said, I don't know. I was talking to her. She didn't respond. I figured if I take the rock, throw it out, she'll listen to me. So he said, do you know what that rock meant to her? I'm like, I'll give her another rock. And he said, no, that rock came from a place called Mecca. And for her, it has religious significance. You can't understand it. But imagine if they took our Torah from the synagogue and threw it out the balcony. How would you feel? I said, Dad, it's a little heavy. I can't imagine someone doing that. And he would tell me, but that's the same thing. To her, it has that value. I still couldn't understand it. Okay, I'll tell her I'm sorry, it'll be all right. He said, no, you need to understand the value of what that is to her, like the Torah is to you. You cannot do this behavior. You owe her a tremendous apology. I hope she forgives you, but you cannot do that.
So you did have an association to the Torah.
So I understood that when we went to synagogue, my father would explain to me, this is God's house, this is the Torah. You have to have reverence for it. You have to have respect for a synagogue. You have to have respect for religion and Judaism. So in that regard, when we walked into a synagogue, I did not talk. And I would ask my father, where is God over here? If it's his house. And he would tell me, like he would point like that, and I would think, because the synagogue had another level, I would think maybe it's upstairs. maybe I'll go upstairs. I was young, I couldn't understand all of the ideas of like religion, the way, but he did put in us tremendous reverence for religion. That we need to understand
That's the key.
that you have to have respect for people of different backgrounds and different religions. And that was a tremendous lesson for me, because I couldn't go outside to play, I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't do all those things because he wanted me to learn to respect other religions.
So let's go back to the classroom. Did you leave?
So I had to. So I did end up leaving, but I did remember seeing a little bit of the Koran. And when we came back to the classroom, I remember the kids just staring at me, like in a very cold way. And I went home and I asked my father, why is it that I couldn't stay in the class when they were teaching the Koran? And he said, but there's no need for you to learn that. But I said, but Dad, I still don't understand why I couldn't stay in the class. And he said, because they don't need you to learn it. But he didn't explain to me, I learned down the road that we're considered najas, we're considered unclean. Anyone outside of that Muslim religion is considered unclean. So we cannot be in the same room with them while they're learning the Quran.
How long after did you leave? How long after that experience did you
So that was the beginning of like seeing the nuances starting to occur. Like all of a sudden we're a little different. Why am I different? Because I'm Jewish. I never, during the SHAI put in our heads, ingrained in our learning that we're all the citizens of Iran. We're all one. There's no separation. We're one. Who are we? Citizens of Iran. And my school, more than anything, really emphasized it. So like it wasn't separated in my school. Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists and Baha'is, we were all one. There's no separation. You're the students of Lycée Razi, citizens of Iran, and that's what we're all about. Suddenly I started to realize, wait a second, no, the Christians are with the Christians and the Muslims with the Muslims, and there's a little bit of differences. So it was first starting to seep into my conscience that we're not all citizens of Iran on equal ground. But I didn't know how to express that or to word that, but I was starting to feel that. And then we got bomb threats in the school, and some of them went off. So my mother said, that's it, you get a threat, you stay home. So I didn't go to school, and we had teachers who would call up the house, and they wanted to know why I didn't go back to school. And my mother would grab the phone from my hand and say, I will speak to every teacher, I will speak to every adult, you cannot answer the telephone anymore. So I started to see, wait a second, things are changing. I cannot talk on the phone because our phones were tapped. Our neighbor downstairs, who used to be in the general in the Shah's army, now switched sides. Things started to change, so my mother picked up on it, and she didn't want us to be scared, but she would tell us, I pick up the phone, I respond to the questions, not you, I will tutor you. So all of a sudden, this kind, nice Persian mother I thought I had, and she's not really Persian, she's Lebanese, but she speaks fluent Farsi, reads and writes. So she was picking up the phone and telling my teachers, I will tutor my own daughter. I speak fluent French, I will teach her what she needs to know. And Farsi, I will teach her. And I said, Ma, you're being very rude to the teachers. And she would say, I know what I'm doing, this is my department, you stay out of it. Okay. So now I didn't have my friends from school to play with. And I really wanted to have a birthday party. And slowly things in Tehran started changing. There was curfews. So my mother would say, who's going to come to your party? There's curfews. They can't come past a certain time. And what I remember most before leaving my school on the last days was I had a friend in school that I really liked. Her name was Mariam, and she was Muslim. And I remember telling her, you know, I can't wait. I know we're leaving Iran. We're probably going to go to America. And I'm sure I'll see you there. And she said, I'm not leaving. And I said, why not? She goes, I don't have to leave. This is my home. And for some reason, when she said that, I cried. Because it occurred to me, I was 8. It occurred to me, if it's her home, but it's not my home. And that was like a major trauma for me for years. Like I realized at that moment, wait a second, that's not my home. Where is my home? My home is going to be in America? Is that my home? At that point, in my head, I felt homeless. I literally felt homeless. Like I don't have a home. I don't have a home. The country is not my home. It wasn't until years later, as an adult, I went back to Israel, that I started to reconnect to a land being my home. First of all, I had a lot of similar memories walking around the streets of Jerusalem, but that feeling of being homeless, because when we arrived in the United States, we were not welcomed here at all. So that feeling never came back to me until I went to the land of Israel. That to me was a very hard thing. So from that conversation till all the way into my adulthood, I was about 18 when I went back to Israel as an adult, I didn't feel I had a home. And that for me was very hard. I was very grateful to the United States for taking us in, but it always felt to me like I'm in a beautiful hotel. It never felt like home. Because when we left and we came to the airport in the US, they were very cruel with us. They were very harsh. I wanted water, I needed the bathroom, and there were long lines at customs. They did not let us go to the bathroom or drink water until we went through the lines. And then they would yell at you, move here, move there. They were very cruel. Like what TSA is today is very mild. We came at the peak of the hostages. The American hostages was taken in Iran by the no Islamic regime. So we arrived into the United States at the peak of that. So they looked at us, Jewish refugees, you're the same as all of them. We can't tell the differences. You're all the same. And that was like a point of frustration for me because I never understood, how could you not tell us apart? We left because of the Islamic regime, because of this revolution. We didn't choose to leave our home. We had to if we wanted to stay alive. My father was on the blacklist. He would have been murdered. We had to leave. I didn't want to leave. And now I'm coming to this new country. Rather than welcome us, you cruel with us. Why? We did nothing. We're coming, it wasn't even easy to come into the United States. My mother says, like, you had to be sponsored, you had to show you had X amount of money in a bank. It wasn't like we didn't come as refugees. We came into the United States to become naturalized citizens. It wasn't like under Obama where everyone who just showed up, just put them on a flight and bring them in. You have no idea who they are. We were vetted. We had to prove that we're going to support ourselves. And that to me, so then at least welcome us. Say, welcome to America. So we didn't have that.
Your trauma, it was more, the difficulty was more like emotional and psychological.
No, we had the day we were going to the airport, and that's in the chapter, the last flight out. I don't want to give away the chapter. We did go through the actual, when we started to leave Tehran, and my father used to tell us, pack up your suitcases, put it under the bed. When the day comes, I'll let you know when it is. He didn't want us to know what day we're leaving. Because unfortunately, I guess I spoke a lot to friends or whoever, and I guess that was my nature. I would talk to people, and he didn't want people to know the day we were leaving. Our phones were tapped. My father didn't allow me to have extended conversations with my family in America because our neighbors switched sides, and he was always on the phone listening. The lines were connected in all the three residences. So I would talk to my grandma, I can't wait to see you. My father would hang up the phone. You cannot say you're going to see her. You cannot say this. You can't say that.
Were really dangerous.
We were blacklisted. It was very dangerous. So when the day arrived and my father and mother woke us up in the morning and they said, everyone in the car, now, everyone in the car. I said, well, what about breakfast? Like, we're so spoiled. We're used to breakfast, like a beautiful Persian breakfast. And my mother's like, we're not having breakfast, get in the car. And my parents knew what that day was. That was the day Khomeini was arriving in Tehran. I had no idea. I was this kid that's just going along with my parents, but I had no idea what was really happening. The only time I started to comprehend was as we started to make our way to the Pahlavi Square, we noticed, wait a second, what is all these people? Why are there so many people? I would say to my father, Papa, why so many people? Is it Khomeini's birthday or something? And he would tell me, don't talk to me. And I would say, it was very unlike my father to say, don't talk to me while I'm driving, because he used to drive us to the Shomal, to the north, to the south. He would tell us, ask me whatever questions you want. And he would go on and on about stories, and he loved to talk. Now he was telling me, be quiet, don't talk. And when I tell you, roll down your windows. So I said, what's going on? I realized something is amiss over here. And my brothers, they were just very quiet, or I didn't know that they were there for some reason. I felt like I'm in a world of just me and my parents. Sometimes I ask my brother, where were you guys when all this was happening? And he goes, we were there, you just don't remember. My brother, God bless him, Robert, he's here. He's 4 years older than me. My oldest brother, Roger, is 6 years older than me. And my youngest was 3 at the time. So he was a baby just going along with it. So here we are making our way out of Tehran, and the traffic, well, we're going to get to the square part, but I don't want to give the whole book away. I'll just get you to a certain part. When we were going in the traffic, and there was a lot of people coming at Pahlavi Square, they started jumping on our cars. And my father said, roll your windows down, all the windows down. And we rolled it down, and I remember being bombarded by candy, and I hate candy till today. I cannot stand candy. And I never knew why I hated candy. It was in my subconscious. Because I remember liking candy when I was in Iran as a child. But since that day, I cannot look at candy or have candy in my house. I don't like candy. And throwing candy at us and saying, Mag Basha, death to the Shah, death to the Shah, say it. And screaming at us, and these eyes, I remember their eyes, and I used to say, these are not Persian eyes. These are not Persian people. Who are these people? And years later in the United States, I was telling this story to a woman in Paramus, and she was a senator's wife, one of the senators from Iran, and she said, you are so paying attention to details. How did you notice that? You're right, they were not Persians. They were Arabs brought into Iran to create a revolution because the Persians could not do it. They are not the type to do it. We had to bring outsiders to do it. And so those eyes, one of them came into the car, looked at me, and said, say it, Mag Bar Khomeini. And I said, Mag Bar Shah. And I said, Mag Bar Khomeini. Mag Bar Khomeini. And he looked at me and he said, what? And my father goes, she's stupid. She's just stupid. She's stupid. She's not operating with a full deck. So I said, no, I know what I'm saying. Mag Bar Khomeini. And now my brothers are looking at me like, oh my God. And I remember that the eyes, something in their eyes was such evil. And I saw those eyes years later in Israel when I walked through the Shuk, in Jerusalem. And one of them came and said, Philistine. And I said, darn it, same eyes. Those are the eyes. Full of hate. A hate that's inexplicable. Persians did not have hate. They were good-hearted. They didn't have this kind of hate. It's like an inexplicable hate. I don't know how to explain it. Darkness, just pure hate. And I never saw that. I had never seen that till that day at the revolution. And so my father looked and said, Mag Bar Shah. And he said, no, she has to say it. She has to say it. And I couldn't say it. And then when I said it, I had to cry. Because I didn't want the Shah to die. Every day in my school, we prayed for the Shah to live a long life. Every single day. If you see the picture of the Shah, we had it in all our textbooks. This was my first grade Farsi book. Every page had this. And my father, God bless his soul, he sent these books out from Iran so that we could never forget the language of Farsi. And every book had the picture of the Shah, which you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to have any paraphernalia, anything relating to the Shah. So fast forward many years later, I was at a dinner with my husband for Eli Beer's Hatzalah. And Reza Shah was there, and I said to him, Reza, can you please autograph my first grade book? And he said, what's your name? And I said, Monavar, and he goes, Monavar Khanum, and he signed my book. And it meant so much to me because, and I said to him, you and I went to the same school. And he said, what school? And I said, Lycée Rosie. And he smiled. Very charming prince. And I always had a crush on him growing up as a child. So now to meet him in real life.
I have to say that, your husband said.
You know what? But it was fascinating to me to meet him in person, and he signed it fast forward. But so all of our school books had this, and we used to pray for him. So for me, it was very painful. When I had to say Mag Bar Shah, it was like very, very painful. It was like Lahavdil, like saying death to a father that you cared about. You genuinely loved him. At least that's how we felt as children. I don't know if every child felt that way, but we felt that.
Right, so I just want to say something.
Yeah.
I think every girl in Iran had a crush on the prince. And you look at his. There's a lot of.
saw the picture, Yeah, but the guy who took the picture had half his head cut off. I don't know. I thought it was unusual. But yeah, this is us at the dinner.
Yeah, and he was very, as a teenager, he was very cute. He was very, very personable.
Very
too, at the
personal.
time, Yeah.
Very, very personal. And so I remember all of that. And when we were leaving, so they said, saved. And that moment, once I said it, then the crowd started to dissipate a little bit. They weren't letting us proceed. And once we did that, my father stepped on the gas and he hit the highway. When he hit the highway, I remember seeing traffic coming into Tehran in reverse. And I said, is it Khomeini's birthday? And he said, no. He's arriving. And then I realized, oh my God, like, wow, what's happening? It dawned on me at that moment. And then after, of course, we had the flat tire, but that's already the rest of it. You got to read the book. But we were in dangerous moments, and really, my mother, God bless her, what she did for us at the airport, and thank God we made it out alive. But yes, so that is, and the part of the airport, what's fascinating is when I was writing the book, I remembered every detail getting us to the airport, and then I don't remember the airport. And I asked my brother Robert, and I said, Robert, did we go through an airport? Like, how did we get on the flight? I remember walking up the flight. I don't remember an airport. Did we not go through an airport? So he goes, are you kidding me? He goes, you're writing a book about it, and you don't remember the airport? That's the whole book. And I said, Robert, all I know is all my life I'm nervous walking through an airport. My hands get clammy. My husband would always tell me, we have to get to the airport like 2 hours before. I'm like, no. When's the flight? 3? We'll get there at 3. He goes, no, it doesn't work like that. I go, I can't stand airports. I once dated an Ashkenaz guy who goes, let's go on a date to an airport. I'm like, I'm never seeing you again. I'm not going out with you. Why would I want to go on a date to an airport? No, it's like a nightmare for me. I don't want to be in an airport. And it never occurred to me, maybe I have some form of trauma at an airport. So my brother Robert explained to me what happened at the airport. And I must have had such fear of what occurred that I blanked it out. And my hands would just shake. I would get clammy, sweaty, and I didn't even realize it.
I mean, now we understand when a child tells us, I have trauma, you have to be very careful not to see. Listening to you, I see how a child is so sensitive, and every little thing can affect them for the rest of their life. So let's just, there's a lot to discuss, obviously.
Sure.
So there's limited time. So let's move. So you're in America, and you're from a very high class family, and they're mistreating you. And tell us a little bit about adjusting and making yourself who you are today in America. Maybe, you can summarize for us.
So the hardest adjustment for me was not having my father around. Because my father took us out and went back. And my father was, for me, why? I was very close to my father. We never knew what my father went back for until years after he passed, where somebody came and sat me down and explained to me what my father did. So for me, that was the hardest thing. I couldn't understand. My mother said he went to take out money for us. Now, that didn't make sense to me. Because I knew my parents had money outside Iran. But I didn't know, so he went to take money out? Why didn't he think to take money out as we were leaving? It just was not a good enough excuse for me. I never believed
Why
it.
did he go back?
I always felt something about him was unique, something was different about him. I didn't know what it was. Something about my father was very like special and heroic, and I couldn't pin it. I just felt it. I can't explain things. Like sometimes I just have these feelings. And so I would tell my mother, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me why he went back. Why is he there? And years later, my husband and I were invited in Great Neck, and I'm not going to say by whom, but I could, technically I could, but I put him on a different name in the book. And he sat me down, Erev Rosh Hashanah, me, my husband, my children were there, and he said to me, I knew your father very, very well. And I said, okay, yeah, I know, we know you too. He goes, no, but I knew him exceptionally well. I knew your uncle. I knew your grandfather. I know, as a matter of fact, every single Persian Jew in Iran. And I looked at him, I said, what? Because every single one? Because I have a dossier on each one.
What?
And I said, you have a dossier on each Jew? He said, yes. So I looked at him, and I looked in a picture in the house, and I said, are you Mossad? So he looked at me and he said, I was. And I said, oh. And he goes, where do you think you're from? I go, where am I from? I was born in Tehran. He goes, yeah. Where is your father from? Tehran. Where's your grandfather from? Tehran. He goes, no. He goes, where is your great-grandpa? I said, are you joking with me? He goes, no. He goes, you're from Gol Paigan. Your origins are from Gol Paigan. So I said, oh, it's fascinating to me. And he started to tell me about my father and my uncle. And he said, the information your father supplied us with was immensely helpful to us to get Persians out of Iran. So I said, what do you mean? So he said, yeah, he always supplied us with information. And he would go in and out of the prison. And I said, what prison? The Evin? He said, yeah, he supplied us with necessary information. I said, how did he go in and out? I didn't understand. I thought you go in, you don't get out. He said, we got information. The information was useful, very, very useful. Your father was a great man.
So basically he was helping
So I had no idea. So I said, can I ask you what year that was? So then that was the year that he was there for the year. And it was that moment, but it was pre that. My husband and I were in California, and one lady came into, I used to give classes because my husband's also a rabbi. Sometimes I act as rabbanit. And I would give classes of Tehillim and Parashat HaShavua. And this woman came into the class, and her eyes looked like my father's eyes. Like I said, she must be related. I'm sure she's related somehow. I didn't know her. After the class, she came over, she goes, you're the daughter of Dr. Omid, Eshar Omid. I said, yes, and she hugged me for like a long time. Felt like a long time. She didn't let me go. It was beautiful. So she goes, I loved your father, and you are like your father. So I said, really? And she goes, we're a distant family. And I said, no wonder you have similar eyes. She had these kind, sweet eyes. And so she said to me, your father did so much for so many of us. And we loved him very much. And he probably never told you about it. I said, no, what did he do? She goes, if he didn't tell you, I cannot tell you. So that moment stayed with me, and I said, I need to find out more about him, but who's going to tell me? So when my father was ill with cancer, he started to write in a notebook his biography. And in the middle of the notebook was poetry. And we discovered this when he was sick. And I couldn't understand what he wrote, because it was written in Persian script. And I have a hard time reading script in Farsi. I could read it in the print, but not in script. So I asked somebody we knew, please translate to me what this is all about. And he translated the page for me and the poetry. And he said, in the poetry, your father hints at seeing things that your average Persians don't see. So I said, what do you mean? He said, suffering, extreme suffering. Your father experienced extreme suffering? I said, not to my knowledge. He said, well, he writes about it in detail, that he saw it or saw people with such suffering. But I do remember like my father telling me things throughout my life that, you know, when he came finally to America and he would tell me, go get dressed, we're going to this event, Persian event. And I would say, but Dad, I don't have what to wear. Well, that would really get him. And he would come into my closet and say, you're so blessed not to wear a hijab. I'm like, Papa, of course, that's a given. He goes, no, it's not a given. It's not a given. You don't know how blessed you are. It's not a given. You thank God. Night and day you're not living in Iran. Night and day you sit and thank God not living in Iran. And I didn't really understand. Like he would say these things and then he'd walk out of the room because he couldn't stand me with my nonsensical face. So he would tell me, I would tell him, you know, I don't have this and I don't have that. And he would tell me, you don't know how blessed you are. He would go on and I would stop telling him after a while. But now that I understand what he saw and what he did, I see that he was trying to explain it to me. I remember one day telling my father, Dad, you know, how come you don't love Israel? And he would tell me, who told you I don't love Israel? I said, I don't know, you just never make a big deal about it. You know, when I do these things in college, pro-Israel activities, you don't take pride in it. You're almost ashamed of it. He goes, I'm ashamed of it? And he looked at me, he goes, you think you're the first Zionist in the family? Is that what you think? So I go, I don't know, Dad, it just doesn't make sense to me. He goes, okay, it's okay, you could think that. And I didn't understand. And one day I said to him, Papa, come with us, me and the kids, to the Israel Day Parade in New York City. And he said, I will come, one day I will come. And then one year, he said, this is the year I'm coming. So I said, oh, great. He came with us. And I had this flag, Moshka, remember the flag from Tessone? I had my flag on the stick, I'm so proud of it, right? So I take the flag, and I'm behind the barricade where the New York police tells me, don't go past the barricade, this is for the marchers. So my father's watching me, he goes, you're gonna stand here with the flag, right? Yeah? Okay, give me the flag. He gives it away. He's wearing a suit with a tie. My father, everywhere he wears a suit with a tie. So he tells the policeman, excuse me, move over. And he moves the barricade. And they let him. He walks right through. He goes, this is how you hold the flag of Israel. And he holds it high, and he goes, Am Israel Chai, Am Israel. And he's singing all these songs, and I'm like, who are you? And I'm so embarrassed, because the way he did it, he's just standing there, a man in a suit with a tie, and he's singing. And there's marchers going by. The police don't say nothing to him. And I'm like, wow. Dad, I had no idea. He goes, so now you know.
So let's skip a little bit also further. So now you're married to a rabbi, you cover your hair, and you know, let's compare the little association you had to Judaism, to who you are now, and you said something very, very important. You said, even though we were not religious, like also me as a rabbi's wife, the religion, the Jewish religion was not full-fledged, covering of the hair and everything else. It wasn't portrayed to us the way we didn't know. But you said something very important. You said he gave us morale. We were very proper people. We were decent. We had decency. We had morale. So can you tie in together your experience in America, becoming a rabbi's wife, and the morale you picked up, the decency that was embedded in you through your parents? Can you tie all of this together?
I'll try. So my first chapter of the book, when I was writing the book, I kept saying, which one's going to be the first chapter? And I sat down, this was my father had passed away already when I wrote the book. My uncle was alive, Don Moshe, Moise in Farsi. And I said to him, Don Moshe, tell me something about my grandmother that I'm named after, Monavar. Something, one thing about her. Very easy. She has one thing she used to say every night to us before bedtime. Mohabbat Bashim. That's it. That's the whole thing. If you could do that, her name stays alive with you. So I said, okay, Mohabbat Bashim, Mohabbat Bashim. She used to say to us, be kind. Just be kind. Be kind. In everything you want to do or say, be kind. So I always think when in Yahadut, in Judaism, you taught Derech Eretz Kadma la Torah. It's a basic klal. It's a basic understanding that manners, Derech Eretz Kadma la Torah. But it's not manners. It's more than manners. It's kindness. It's consideration. It's civility. It's decency. It's understanding that, you know, there's also an idea in the Yahadut that's called chesed ve'emet. Truth is important, but there are times you're allowed to bend the truth for chesed. For example, someone's going to buy a house, they already put a down payment to a house, they cannot get their money back, and they ask you, what do you think of this house? Now, you ask them, did you already put a down payment? Are you able to get your money back? So they say no. Now you tell them, well, I see the space is grand. You have nothing nice to say about that house. You find something nice to say. That's where chesed, where a kindness precedes the emet. You know, so I think Persians overall have a lot of that. I think they have a lot of goodness and kindness and derech eretz. So if they have that, it's easier to take that and to teach them the laws of the Torah. I always found it much easier to do that than the other way around, where in other communities they may have a lot of Torah, but they may be missing the derech eretz component, like the civility, the empathy, the basic goodness. It's a lot harder to teach that. That's like, it's the pre. If you have that, then you could manage. It's like a prerequisite to any college course. You have to have a prerequisite. Once in a while you could bypass it, but overall you need to have your prerequisite courses in order to do the next thing. So the Persians, I feel, have it. I feel as a people, they're genuinely good people. My mother, God bless her, says that when she was in Iran and we had during that period where the Shah was no longer in Iran and they had lines for food, she used to take my youngest brother and stand on line and everyone would let her go first. And in the United States, when 9/11 happened, there was so much looting. Of course, the news didn't want to cover that, but we know that. We know people who were from that area who said that there was so much looting. Like, given an opportunity, instead of being more civil, they act uncivilized. To me, that says volumes about a society. So here, the people let her go and get food for her child because she was holding a child. That says volumes. So the society, the Persian people, they're good people. I pray to God that they're going to overcome this evil regime. This was thrown upon them, and really it's so un-Persian. This is not who we are. We don't know how to be uncivilized. We don't know how to make a revolution without help. So it's not who we are. We're not barbaric. We're overall civilized. And you always felt that. One of the things that I remember pre-revolution was that my father said to me one day, you cannot go to the police if you get lost anymore. You cannot go to the police for help. And I would say, Papa, why? All my life you said to me, go to the police for help if you get lost. He goes, because the police are no longer the police. I'm like, what does that mean? So I never trusted the police, even in America. I never trusted the police after that day, which is a crazy thing. My kids always say, Ma, it's like authority tells you something and you do the opposite. I go, because all my life when I was young, I had to follow authority, and suddenly authority was no longer authority. They were now crooked, they were corrupt, they did terrible things. So I no longer trust the police. And I told my kids, just because a man who wears a police uniform rings the bell, you question whether he's a police. So this is how my kids were raised. They always tell me, Ma, you gave us your trauma. I go, you're lucky I did that with you because it protects you. You don't just look at a costume and say, oh, the guy wearing a costume is a policeman. Like I told them, you have to call the precinct. This is the number of the precinct. It's like crazy. Yeah, I'll give you a quick little story. One night, I went to PTA. My husband wasn't home, and I left my oldest in charge. He was 10 years old. And I said, don't open the door for anyone, even if it's police. So he goes, why would the police come, right? So I end up going to the PTA. I come back, my neighbor, Italian neighbor, runs over, he goes, "You don't know what happened here tonight." And I said, "What?" He goes, "The police were at your house, and your kids would not open the door." And they showed the badge, and they would not open the door. I go, "Did they call the precinct?" He goes, "You told them to call the precinct?" It looks like my youngest daughter was upset at my oldest son, and she called the police 911. And they wouldn't open the door, so the police thought that there was someone in the house holding a gun to them.
Oh, wow.
And they called the neighbor, and the neighbor had to come and get them to open the door. It was complicated. But I was like, I'm so proud of all of you for listening.
So Regine, because I want
Go
to give
ahead.
time for Q&A also,
Go ahead.
was there anything else in the pictures in your presentation you wanted to get through?
Yes, the Tehillim. I wanted to say the Tehillim for our people in Iran right now.
Do you want to talk about Akko Modesto quickly, how you came about doing that?
So, in the nights that we were in curfew, I couldn't play with friends in my neighborhood. I couldn't play with friends in my school. So my father said, "I'm going to get you a drawing board, markers, and paints, and you're going to draw." And I would say, "But I don't know how to draw." He goes, "You know how to draw. All you have to do is look at the thing and draw it." So I did a lot of drawing. And all that drawing, my father would look at my drawing and say, "Wow, you're really talented. Maybe one day I'll send you to Paris to be a designer." So it stuck in my head. When I came to the U.S., and in that year my father wasn't around, during class I used to draw fashion. And I had a teacher who used to tell me, "You better become a designer with these drawings." And I said, "I will. One day I will." So I did. So I went to FIT, thank God, and I did study fashion design and fashion buying merchandising, and I created my own line of modest swimwear, which was missing. So I always say Iran with modesty was the revolution of no, no, no. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't dress this, you can't do this. It was a revolution of no. With Akko Modesto, I created what I call the revolution of yes. Yes, you could go snorkeling. Yes, you just need the right garment. Yes, you could go hiking. Yes, you can dress whatever you want. Go wherever you want, swim wherever you want. And this is what you're going to wear, and it's going to be so fashionable that you're going to want to wear it. So that's what I did with my Akko Modesto. I'm very proud of it.
Very nice. Okay, so we're going, for those who want to join, we're going to say Tehillim, Psalms for
This particular
the people of Iran. Go
This
ahead.
particular Tehillim has a lot of value to me because my father sang it Friday night with my uncle in a very unique nigun. And so I happen to really like it. It goes like that. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsa, bin'ot sheyabitzeni, amei menuchot yanaleni, nafshi yeshover yancheni, b'maglei tzedek למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגד צר מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, תשמת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. So my father had this off-tune song with it, and I used to think it's just him, he's off-tune all the time. And one day we spent Shabbat with another Persian family, and they sang it the same way, and I started crying, and I said, "Oh my God, this is an actual nigun." So this particular one really speaks volumes to me, that no matter what's happening, even though we walk in the valley shadow of death, God is with me, and I will never be afraid. And many times in my life, I experienced this, whether it was at the airport scene, which I ended up realizing what happened, when I was hit by a car, when I was held up by a gun. All this is in a book, and I did have a lot of really the grace of God that saved me many times throughout my life. So this speaks volumes to me, and we should say it today with kavanah for the Persians in Iran today, May the Geulah come quickly. May this evil regime collapse so that we could finally really have peace in the world. Because with this collapse, we will have no more Hezbollah, no Houthis, no Hamas, and all that evil will just disappear with God's help. So that's what we're praying for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I'm gonna open the floor up to just maybe one or two questions if anyone has, and then Regine is here if you're for a book signing, if anybody would like to participate. Is there any questions for Regine?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
What's your name? What's your name?
All right.
My name is Rebecca Tessone. When you were 8 years old and that girl said to you, your friends, I don't have to go, and you had that breakthrough moment. That conversation took place in Farsi?
In Farsi. Mariam.
So
Her name is
Mariam,
Mariam.
my question is, because that was a very important moment in your life, did you know Hebrew or English when you were 8 years old, when your family moved here?
No, I didn't know Hebrew or English, but I knew French, which was tremendous help because if you could write in French, English is very easy. You have a lot of silent letters. And if you write in Latin, French is a Latin language, so English is easy. Hebrew, we started learning Aleph Bet in Iran, in the shul after school. We had a shaliach from Israel teaching us the Aleph Bet. So we started it. And I always had an affinity for the Hebrew language. So thank God I am good at languages. It's easier for me. And my mother's extremely good at languages. She knows many more than I do. But I love it. So because you love a language, you will speak the language. And because I love detail, I pay attention to accents and how nuance of language. So today when I speak Hebrew, people think I'm Israeli. I did become Israeli. I'm very proud of being Israeli. I made Aliyah in the most difficult period during Corona. And I'll tell you, my Shaliach and Nefesh B'Nefesh said, you're picking the worst time in history to make Aliyah. I said, great, that's the story of my life. I picked the worst times. But I'm very proud of it. So I am American, Iranian, Israeli, Baruch Hashem, citizen of the world.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
But just linguistically, you
Yes.
were homeless. The only language you officially knew
Was
Farsi
French and
a
Farsi.
little French. Okay.
French I knew very well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think there was a question up front here.
Sure. What's your name?
My name is Linda. I just
Hi,
wanted to
Linda.
know, and I don't know if you can answer this, why isn't there a closer relationship between the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic and Great Neck? I've lived here 30 years. And we went to a beautiful Shabbat with an Orthodox Persian family. It was wonderful. We haven't been contacted them again. We had a wonderful time. But even when we had rabbi dialogues and things like that, or synagogue, the two never come together. And I wondered why, because we're all Jews.
Right. It's very sad.
I don't know why.
You know, when I came to Brooklyn from Iran, we went to Brooklyn to live with my mother's family, Lebanese, Syrian community. And they used to ask me, so what are you? Are you Ashkenaz or SY? And I didn't know what that means. Not this and not that. Because in Iran, you're just Jewish. I don't know what's an Ashkenaz. I don't know what's an SY. I don't know what any of that is. I'm Persian Jewish. I used to say I'm an Iranian Jew. What's Iran? They had no idea. So I would come home and I would ask my mother, Mommy, what is SY? What is Ashkenaz? She would say Ashkenaz are people from Eastern Europe. And Syrian, SY means from Syria. Are you from Syria? I go, no, I'm from Iran. She goes, therefore you're not SY. Okay, I go back to school. I'm Iranian Jewish. Well, what is that? I go, I don't know. There's a country called Iran. I go, I don't know how you don't know, but yeah, there's a country called Iran, and that's where I'm from. So what are you? The Sephardic? And it took me years when my husband ended up going into Sephardic studies, and he would have to break down what is Sephardim, Mizrahim, Ashkenazim. That's when I really started to learn. I really had no idea. So you're right. It shouldn't have these nuances and differences. But we are different, and there's a beauty to being different. There's a beauty to being Persian. There's a beauty to being Ashkenaz. When I started my business with Aqua Modesta, I started to really understand Ashkenazim. I didn't know what they were. I thought everyone is from Eastern Europe. Well, not necessarily. There were some in Greece. There were some in other places. So I started to learn the different nuances. But it's really just a lack of education. In order for Jews to be united, you have to educate yourself about different groups. And then you don't have fear of the different groups.
And I would like to add, if possible, I don't know, I feel that, especially in the Greek Neck,
Louder.
I feel, I think the mic is on.
Yeah, Mike is
It's
on.
on, the mic is on. But okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I feel very strongly that now we have a lot of the boys in our community, in our shul, in our synagogue, marrying Ashkenazis. There is a big interaction between Brooklyn, Great Neck. You know, two of my own kids have married Ashkenaz. So I would not use the word never. We are educating ourselves, and I feel we are interacting a lot more. It's a matter of, yes, we just are much more comfortable with our own kind, but there is a big mixing of the Ashkenaz and Sephardi. We're learning, so I think it's gotten much better. That's the bottom line, is what I'm trying to say. Much, much better. I have to add that in because I see it. I see that the community is really interacting and growing, and we have a lot to be proud of. A lot. Because if you take a look at Great Neck today, is nothing to do with 5 years ago, nothing to do with 10 years ago. We are getting on the map, we are making something of ourselves, it's growing, it's not growing, it's flourishing by the thousands. And we have a lot to be proud of, really. Very good.
Alright, so what I'd like to do, because I want to give Regine a chance for the book signing, and then if anybody, she's here, if anybody would like to continue chatting and doing that. Alright, thank you everyone. I want to thank again on behalf of SHAI. I want to thank Regine, Monavar, Tessone for coming and sharing her book with us today, and for Rabbi Rebetzin for joining us today. Thank you.